So in this video, we're going to look at how to help yourself to do ERP if you are one of those people who struggle with checking electrical appliances. Now, if you're watching this, I'm guessing so far you haven't quite managed it. One of the things that a lot of people do is, or most people do, is they try harder and harder to get certain that they've definitely switched it off or it's definitely not going to create a problem. So the checking of electrical appliances is often, not always, but often, mostly about a sense of overinflated responsibility that you are somehow going to be responsible for causing harm, usually by fire or maybe flood, that you're going to cause harm to everybody, or that your whole place is going to go up in smoke and you'll lose everything. So what people tend to do is try and get more and more certain by doing more and more checking. So I made a little vicious flower here, which I'm hoping you can see properly. So this is not an exhaustive list of the things that you could do or people sometimes do, but it's just some examples. So in the middle, I've got OCD, like fear of causing harm, uncertainty, anxiety, doubt, those feelings, right? So the sorts of things that people do are check the appliances off, quite obviously, but it's usually a checking and then a double checking and a triple checking, isn't it? Switching things off at the socket, even when they possibly don't need to be switched off at the socket, okay? Unplugging things completely. Taking them with you. Oh, you wouldn't believe how many people have rocked up at my office with hair straighteners in their bags, candles in their bags, all sorts. Leaving things in a safe place, you know, somewhere where you feel it's fireproof. Going over in your mind that, you know, reminding yourself, yes, I remember checking that it was off. It's a thing that people do. Just avoiding using the item completely, or seeking reassurance from someone else, asking them, getting them to check, asking them if you checked, photographing so you can check back later. All these kinds of things are the things that people do to try and get themselves to feel more certain, right? Less doubt, more certain. But what we find is the more you do it, hence the error. So this is you trying to get more certain. The more you do all these things, the more it actually feeds back into the problem, because you become less and less sure of yourself, less and less able to kind of trust yourself. Oh yeah, I did that. So where some people might just automatically switch something off or not switch something off and walk out the door, people, when the more you try and make sure, the less sure you feel. So that is the problem, isn't it, in a nutshell? So I would encourage you to make your own vicious flower, which might look something quite similar to this. And if you're not clear about how to do that, I have got a separate video about vicious flowers themselves. Okay, then make a hierarchy of the different items that you check. Okay, again, I've got another video about how to make a hierarchy, but that is basically just putting in order of sort of scariness. All right, and it may be that you're someone for whom everything feels equally scary. If so, that's fine, don't worry. But for a lot of people, they'll be like, you know, the tumble dryer is worse than the kettle, or the hair straighteners are at the top, or so for some people, or for a lot of people, certain things feel more dangerous than others. So you're going to make a hierarchy, and then you're going to work through that. That is basically your little map of where you're going to work through and do your exposure and response prevention. So how do you do ERP with this problem? Okay, so now you understand how the problem maintains itself. Now you've done one of these. You've got your hierarchy of appliances. Okay, now how you're going to do your ERP is you're effectively going to do the opposite of everything that's on here. Okay, so you are not going to check it, you're not going to take it with you, blah, blah, blah. But you know, obviously not checking is all very well, because it's really not very easy to just not check. But I've got a special trick for you, which makes checking basically pointless, okay? So instead of unplugging it and turning the plug off, leaving it switched off, what you do is you leave it plugged in and leave the plug socket switched on. Regardless of what the appliance is, that's what you're going to do, okay? And when you do that, you will discover there is no point checking. right? Because all your mind's going to go is, well, it's definitely on. I definitely left the hair straighteners plugged in and the plug socket on, okay? You might feel the urge to go and check whether or not you actually turned the straightener themselves off, or whether or not you actually, the toaster isn't on when you left the kitchen or whatever. So what I say to people is like, look, here's the thing. If you can't stop yourself from going to check when you've left it plugged in and switched on at all, then you're going to switch it on the appliance as well. Oh no, shock horror. And I'll probably get the fire brigade after me. So the thing is, when you know the consequence of checking is that you're going to make it even scarier for yourself, you will manage to deal with that not checking so much better. And actually, most people, what I find is when they do this, when they leave the appliance plugged in and switched on at the plug, it is remarkable how quickly they stop thinking about it. So that is just an idea for you, right, to try, because all of this cutting down on checking, trying to make the routine shorter, all of that stuff, it doesn't actually ever get you to just sort of trust yourself that it's enough. And so when I get people to do this, I find that it's incredibly effective, actually, in just getting the checking thing to stop happening. And most people, after not very long of doing this, of slowly working through one thing after another until you're not worrying about anything, will really make them have so much more freedom. So I talk about this with electrical appliances. You could also do it with candles. I know a lot of people worry about candles. And if it is difficult for you if the idea of leaving something plugged in and switched on is just too horrendous to handle and not doing any of your checking behavior or anything, what I would say is then, in which case, what you're going to do is you're going to cut down the amount of time that you do it for. But that is only if you absolutely cannot make yourself do it without. In an ideal world, what I would say to people is plug it in, switch it on, go off to work, right? Because what you'll find is the longer you're out of the house, the more you habituate, the less you worry about it. Because what people worry about is they think that what they're going to think is, oh my God, all day I'm going to be stressing about it until I can come home and see that the house isn't burnt down. But what we learn is actually we habituate to the worry, and over time we stop thinking about it. And if you keep doing that with loads of different things, guess what? You're not going to need to check anymore. So give it a go, obviously, in conjunction with some of my other videos. Make sure you understand all the things that I'm talking about. But it is a relatively simple thing to do. I didn't say easy, but it's a relatively simple thing to do to get yourself to a point where you don't need to check those things anymore.